Oh right, long
Yeah,
time ago.
long time ago.
Yeah.
So I didn't ever pursue them.
Do you keep notes? You have a notebook?
Always, I have.
You have it with you now?
I thought I bought it, but it's gone.
So you see anything or hear anything, you write it down?
Yeah, I'm overhearing everything.
Yes, so anything.
You never know what might crop up in the next novel.
Yeah. Well, so let's hear from you reading the prologue, the first chapter really, to the book, which sets the scene and gives an idea of your writing and
The ideas that I'm exploring.
the ideas you're exploring. Thank you for that. Yeah. Exactly what we want to hear.
Yes, exactly. So I thought I'd read. I'm not going to read the whole prologue, or else we'll be here all night. But just to explain why I choose this is, as many of you know, I used to be a teacher of 17, 18-year-olds, and whenever I was introducing a new text, I'd always read it to the students so they could hear the voice, and so then that starts to carry them through. But also, what part I'm going to read to you, it sets up the tension in the novel and what I am actually exploring throughout it, which is the deceptive nature of our communication, and that might raise some hackles already, but that's fine. It also sets up the idea of an ungendered narrator, which I've been playing with and working out if that works. Yeah. My notes are not. Hold on. I'm betting that water goes very soon. So there's a lot of passages here, well, times when the narrator is sitting on a train. The train sort of is between not only places but past, present, and so I play with that as well. The Great Midlands Rail has often struck me as a misnomer. I'm on a train bound for Port Albert in the east of England, and I have no intention of going to the Great Midlands, lovely though they may be. But perhaps all this is a matter of perspective, and that indeed can be deceiving. Years ago, as a teenager, sitting on a similar train on the same line and going in the same direction, a woman beside me, who could have been the newspaper reading man's wife, had tried to start a conversation. "Where you off to, love?" she'd asked me, not 10 minutes out of London. "Port Albert," I reacted with monosyllabic politeness. "Arse end of the world, that," she snorted. I remember feeling inclined to agree with her, but now I question her crass assessment. "What's there for you?" "Home." "Ah." She picked up her crocheting, adjusted her buxom body at the back of the blue velour seat, and didn't say another word until the train stopped at Station. There she packed up her rather mawkish mauve creation and waddled somewhat clumsily towards the door. "Watch yourself, love." At Station, the train stops for a little longer than usual as it unburdens itself of its last two carriages. To pass this time in this hiatus, passengers bound for Port Albert can trace the hurdy-burdy of the throng on the platform. Rucksacks and bicycles, duffel coats and sports jackets, track suits and blue suits wander up and down as their owners read posters advertising violin concertos, ABBA revivals, Brechtian performances and pub quiz nights. Today, I watch as a teenager sitting across the aisle blows his nose on a tissue, presses it onto the window and stares as it slowly and gracefully slides down the glass. It's a way to while away the time, I suppose. Just as the third tissue reaches the bottom of the window, the train jolts and we are on our way, truncated and almost empty, heading towards the north coast of Eastershire. I am returning to the arse end of the world, having lived and worked all over other parts of its anatomy before coming back to what now feels like home. To be honest, I didn't feel at home for a long time. As a secondary school teacher, I was a bit of a gypsy. I would find work for a couple of years in one country or another, enjoy discovering a culture that was new to me, and then move on as the gloss faded. Somehow I was never able to settle. Now I feel that I belong in a little village that clings to the shifting mud of the North Eastershire marshland. So here I am, going home. From my perspective, the countryside is flashing past the window of this train. The snot-filled young man across the aisle is now scrolling his phone, and on my side of the carriage, I'm wondering how I'm going to tell you this story. My mother always used to tell her children that most people are duplicitous, manipulative, and fraudulent. She told us not to listen to village gossip and not to come in too involved in its politics. Her advice was to remain distant and aloof. I remember feeling sceptical at the time about her wariness of others, but more recently I've realised there is value in her wisdom. Be patient with me, as this is my first attempt to tell you a story. Remember, reader, I'm the narrator. Please do not confuse me with my author, whom I hereby absolve of all accountability for my observations.
And that includes the snot story too. So Claire, why do you choose to have an ungendered, unnamed narrator?
Because I think I'm exploring how we do deceive ourselves when sometimes we say, I'm not judging that, whether it comes from a man or a woman. And this way we can sort of say, well, have we assumed that that's a girl doing that? Or assumed that there's a boy doing that, and therefore there was a meaning because of that? It's that sort of just trying to take one level of how we make judgments out of it. Well, Nether is lower. We used to live in Leicestershire, a place called Nether Green Lodge, and I think that was Upper Green, and we were Nether Green, and I think that was lower. I meant Butts is, you know, your butt.
And May Batty. Well, these are all fine, and there is no disclaimer in the front of the book that these are all imaginary characters. Are they imaginary?
Entirely. And as we know, only one person in this room has actually given. I sent it to her. I said, "This is actually you. Are you okay with this?"
So you're legally covered.
I'm totally covered.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think this is a wonderful time to ask Henrietta. What?
You went to spam.
You went to Henrietta, come give us some more names.
Oh my God! Well, I'm reading number 3. What are you reading?
Yes,
It's got in a mud.
we've gone out of it.
A mud. Yes.
Would you like to?
Okay, fine. I'll just stand up away from the sun.
Do you want to give an intro to what Henrietta's going to be reading?
No, aren't you? Because you've just done it with all the names.
Okay, that's the intro.
Yeah.
We're talking to, there's a funeral.
Oh yes, there's a funeral.
And the narrator is observing the people from the village arriving for the funeral.
Right, before I start, a minor glossary of 2 words for those who struggled with quidnunc, which obviously means what now, or what's new. It means an inquisitive and gossipy woman. So Mrs. Quidnunc is an inquisitive and gossipy woman, so it might help you later. And the other one is Sugenruhe, a German word, which means the restlessness all the birds feel before they migrate. So that's Sugenruhe. Right, without further ado, they're all gathering for this funeral. Right. The migration of villagers began. Stella and Ian Starling had anachronistically left their empty nest after a momentary sense of Sugenruhe. As they fluttered around their front door, they hopped into their freshly polished 2012 Aston Martin Signet, reversed into their shared driveway, and winged their way to the church. Their neighbours, Mary and Robin Swift, watched through lace curtains, and when the coast was clear, Mary donned a feather hat, Ian tapped his walking stick on the ground, and they toddled over the driveway. The argument between the Starlings and the Swifts has gone on for years, and if you believe Mrs. Quidnunc, who has been following the debate closely, Swifts are being bullied. Despite all attempts to create distance, the Swifts and the Starlings arrived at the church door at the same time, and the usher showed them to the same pew, where Mary and Stella ruffled their dresses in a show of territory, and Ian and Robin pecked a cursory nod at each other. The warblers and the cranes tripped in together. Walt Warner retired many moons ago from a career as a defamation lawyer in Leeds. A useful chap to have around when you're writing a novel about English village life. Daisy Thrush itched along the aisle, supported by a large walking frame, and perched herself with the villagers. Her son Simon, known as Scratch, has taken on his father's business as the local yet intermittent taxi driver. He grows vegetables and potted plants in his allotment, watches over a drove of donkeys in the field behind his mother's house, and offers a local fixing service for all those products with a built-in use-by date. There were the Shanks, quietly tattled towards the church door, twitching at all and sundry. Nick Shank had been at primary school with me, and his wife had always felt a bit of an outsider in the village. Her grandfather arrived a mere 2 generations ago from a village 17 miles to the south and had married a local girl. She tailed Nick, walking with a short, quick, hopping step, hoping that no one would notice her, the flagstones would swallow her up, and the service would be quick. During one of our exchanges about the ever-rising cost of heating the church in cold weather, we heard a clamour as Mark Harrier swooped in. You've met him before in chapter 1, or you will have when you bought the book. He's the chap with the dyed hair and fading ginger beard who was running the Hart Gallery in Barton Broom. For much of his life, he was the local Lothario. Rumour has it that in his younger years, he went through many of the bright young things, as well as 1 or 2 of the older versions. He swarmed the village in summer, hoping for a bit of holiday romance, before returning to the mundane boredom of their Essex or London roosts. Village mythology also claims that he lost an elegant, wooden, clinker-built boat with a wine-glass transom, new sails, and an almost new engine in a card game to Gibeus Moon. Now, reader, I suspect you're wondering if you need to remember all these characters. Let me assure you that I'm just presenting a snapshot of the community which came to pay respect to my parents. Some people you will meet again, others you will not.
One of the features of Claire's writing that I enjoy is the way you're wafted along with the narrative and suddenly you're addressed by now reader, or it's useful to have someone like a lawyer in the village when you're writing a novel. And it's an interesting stylistic trick. There are other ones, aren't there, where you run away with the words.
The clatter of the platter, which is overused. And even the B one, the buts and things, it's overused, but consciously so.
Yeah.
The alliteration.
And it's sometimes the narrator, but not always.
No, sometimes it's the author.
Yeah. So that's something, when you've paid your money, you could...
And by the way, that's Cat Skulls. You know what photo that is? That's Cat Skulls, who could have been here tonight, but she's got a dinner party. It's her photo that hangs in the hero pub. It's a beautiful photo. Yeah. Unfortunately, the posts are no longer around, so it kind of doesn't work any longer in real life. There we go.
Claire, would you like to read about things on what they seem?
Is that the going through the...
That's the point we've reached. Yeah. Well,
We're whipping through this.
This is all spontaneous.
That's okay. So this is all about how, as a child, the narrator is beginning to understand perspectives and deceptions, and how reality is not what we think it is. There is no such thing as reality, and I've also lost my spot. So I'm going to keep harping along until 34 years from now. Here we go, one day. Yep, okay, got it. I could go on rubbishing along until I've got it. Now I've got it. So the child is wandering around Eddie's house, who is essentially an art dealer, isn't he?
Yeah. A gent.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. One day, I remember in particular, as I was drawn towards a door that had been left tantalisingly ajar. I pushed it open and for a moment stood rigid, as my mind was assailed with shapes, colours and lines. These paintings were like nothing else in the house. There was a boat, but not a boat. A hand, but not a hand. A dog, but not a dog. They offered parts of stories from different perspectives. There was no whole. There were bits that could be interpreted, but there was no clear meaning. I didn't understand their language, but my consciousness was stimulated and my senses were overwhelmed as I beat a sensible retreat. I thought that I was being duped, and everything I thought I knew about art had been upturned, and I didn't understand the message nor the game. Eddie rarely accompanied me on these explorations, but always waited patiently in the little sitting room next to the kitchen. My curiosity exhausted, I would turn for tea and brownies served by Mrs. Quidnant, his housekeeper. He would ask me about which painting had piqued my fancy that day, and we would talk about its origins, its creation, its construction, its philosophy. I left with a buzzing head, wondering how it all fitted into my ever more complex understanding of the intricacies of life and the peculiarities of people. On the day I found the door ajar, Eddie talked of Braque, Picasso and Feltini, and I started to think that we are the sum of our parts, but we never know the whole. We hear bits of what others say, but are limited by our own interpretations. We can't truly understand them. Eddie wasn't just talking about appearances, he was speaking to me about possibilities of substance, of thought, of meaning. He was asking me to think in perspectives and layers.
Narrator this time, you are.
Oh, with Matney, yes.
Yes. What is your favourite part of the world?
A little pool out just parallel to Norton Bank, Norton Creek.
Oh, right. Yeah. Otherwise known, by the way, we haven't said it, as Barton
Inlet.
Inlet is Claire's name for Burnham Overy. Sorry, the author's name, the narrator's name.
It's not Burnham Overy.
It's not Burnham Overy, we deny it totally. Moving on, early reading.
What did I read?
Yeah.
I didn't read. My mother was appalled. She thought I was no read, but she eventually gave me Enid Blyton, and then I started reading.
How old were you when you
17.
And your three best, most influential novels that you've read?
Which would you prefer? The Great Gatsby,
That's one.
The Leopard,
Yeah.
The Plague.
Yeah. And The Great
That's
Gatsby.
three. Yeah.
That's three.
Yeah.
It takes too long to explain The Great Gatsby.
Why I like it.
Yeah. Does it?
Howard Fitzgerald, it's nothing to do with the plot or the atmosphere of it, it's how Fitzgerald uses language to show how meaning shifts.
Back to words.
Yeah, back to how words work.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And
Dust.
yes, your best boat.
Gypsy.
You can see I'm struggling now, but we're going to throw this open to questions. Your best poem.
And
You had warning of this.
I know I had warning, and then I said to you, but what I thought at the time, but then I thought that's a really silly thing just to say, because you have to preface that with how you're feeling at the time, because that would always change,
Yeah.
depending on how you're feeling.
Yeah.
So it probably is still,
How are you
I
feeling
know.
today?
the Cage Skylark, copy
Right.
of the Cage Skylark is
Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah.
And then I just thought, I don't really know a poem which Szymborska, Wisława Szymborska, who's Polish, who does a very, very deep is a ridiculous word, but a poem called The Museum, about how transient we are in life.
Yeah. Well, right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. This wonderful novelist, multi-layered, fun book to read. Recommend you to buy it. And I'm wondering, yes, this goes for twice the price because it's got all the annotations. Now, I'd like to see if anybody would like to ask Claire.
Can
any
I just say
questions.
one thing?
Yes.
Thank you to Sam, my son,
Oh,
who designed the cover.
Well, questions from the floor?
So you say that you're not very good at plot, which I disagree, and I've read the book, and it's really good, but if you don't start with the plot, where do you start with the book? Is it
Ideas.
characters, or?
It's ideas. So something will strike me as quite a good thought. It's usually funny. I mean, you know me so well, so you would know that I'll always see something funny in it, which is not always good, because it can be quite insulting to some people. But then I'll think, well, how can I take that and put it into a plot? So, yeah, plot is definitely my weakness, because I'll start with ideas.
Have you exhausted your ideas for the time being? Or have you, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that sound rude. Have you finished? Have you got a whole store covered of ideas in your head that you want to start with the next book on?
Yes.
Already?
Yes, so my next one will probably be called Sand.
Oh.
And then I'm almost thinking, and then water, because of course, money. Sand is a bit more sifty.
Yeah.
So you could do something more sifty with how language works. And then water would be completely, I haven't actually gotten that far, but I'm thinking about sand and doing, again, how meaning works. With grains of sand, or those sorts of things. But there's no plot.
Thanks.
But I actually know, Catherine, you had a good idea. But you did. You did. You said, how about in Barton, if you carried on with the same sort of village or something, and I'd still go back to the moorings, because I think that is just such a great, for me, I've imagined it. Really, it's almost concrete, which is such a stupid thing to say. And Catherine said, well, why don't you do something like someone comes along and wants to put a McDonald's in Overy State? It's not going to be as extreme as that, but, you know, and how do the villagers cope with that underneath? And it'll be in the sand.
It's like a local hero story.
Sorry?
It's like a local hero story.
Yes, it would be, yeah. Isn't that good?
Oh, fascinating.
There's a good rabbit in that.
Yes, there is.
Was it called Stuart? Was it?
Yeah.
Stuart?
Thank you.
Still on the theme plot, when you start, do you know where you're hoping to get to in the middle? And that's still the end? And how far are you allowed to be distracted from this? I'm sure you would be distracted as you go along. Or is it just flow?
No, I think I don't know. My mind, I realise, is quite muddled a lot of the time. I think my children will certainly say that. So I just start with a complete muddle and see what comes out of it, and then start structuring and ordering. And if I've got this book where I put down ideas from something that would have come to me, say, today, and then my editors actually said, I think we need to be more ordered in how we put those together. So I think I'm going to have this huge wall with all these ideas and say, well, that kind of goes together, and can we make a mini plot out of that? I don't actually know how I do it, to be absolutely frank. It just happens.
Claire, did having a narrator give you a greater freedom to write in this particular novel? Did it make a difference?
It's that it's a constant argument between first person narrator and third person narrator, and which gives the I would argue actually it's less freedom because you're constrained by what you see, or what the narrator sees, and what they experience, and their opinions or judgments or whatever. Whereas if you've got a third person narrator, you can actually cherry pick the characters and what. I think it's probably, narrower to have.
But is that
Don't you think? Or
Yeah,
you-
maybe. And is that helpful in a way? I mean, sometimes it is more helpful to have some firmer boundaries, isn't it?
I've never really thought about that. that, but yeah, not for me, I wouldn't have thought. I don't really like boundaries.
I've read it, but did your narrator and your author ever argue?
Constantly, and then with the editor. The editor and I had, actually she's lovely, you can see the Australian launch on YouTube, and she out of the blue, without warning me, read a piece about Dewsbury Cathedral, and after I said, what on earth are you doing? Because we argued about that passage, that paragraph, for probably 18 months. And you thought it was awful. And now you just read it. She said, I know it needs work, but it's a very good idea. So yeah, I mean, and that's good to argue. Always good to argue. People don't really like it. It's oh, you're always arguing. It's not arguing, it's just debating on a very nice level.
I love your book. Brilliant, made me laugh. Loved your narration.
Right thing to say. If
I'm
you want to
good.
come
I
to
know.
dinner
There
later
are
next
copies.
week.
Yeah, thanks. But I wanted to say, having invested so much in your narrator and the village and where you are in the moorings, in your next book, will you, because we all know this narrator, I mean, I actually, when I read it, I just saw you. I didn't see I didn't know they were non-gendered. I just saw Fair, which maybe wasn't. No, but I wonder whether are you in your next book, will you still use that same narrator because we like them. I loved your narrator. It was great.
Did you like the narrator?
I loved the narrator. Yeah, it was a great character.
There you go. That's another problem. I'm thinking about at the moment. Do I carry on with that, or do I stand back and have a third-person narrator looking at all these other characters? And I've just got to explore that and see what happens. I'll put it past you in a year's time.
Somebody here also asked me if it was like Ellie Griffiths' books, your book, and I said no, not at all. But what I love about the Ellie Griffiths books is you're really invested in Ruth, the main character, and that's what I felt about your book. I just thought actually I really like this person, but I mean obviously I really like you. But I just thought I like the people. I like the social aspect of it and the social conscience that comes through it. I thought that was fabulous, and it was a really joyous people, and I just thought actually I'd love to reconnect with these people. Some of them and know more about them.
Well, thank you for that, because actually we'll talk about that later in the summer, because I'd be really interested in understanding more about why you think that, and because it's quite difficult to step back from your own work.
Yeah.
But I do, what you're saying, what I do as a writer, I always try to find joy. You know how there's so many female writers as woe is me, I've had an awful life, you know, God, kill me now. Trying to say, there is lots of lovely people and things happening in the world who are doing a lot of good things, but often they're in the mud.
But I love the fact they're also supportive of each other the whole way through, and everybody, Mrs. Quidnunk is looking out for everyone, and she disappears off, and then you have to pick up somebody else, and somebody else is looking after the narrator, and the narrator is sort of completely oblivious as what's going on. But that was funny as well. It was great. I loved it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Joyous is the right word.
Yeah, joyous.
And affection. There's a lot of affection in the book too. Let's have some more.
Or more booze
Well,
and
I've got a
some
question.
food.
Oh, yes, please.
Claire, was it difficult to know when you finished the novel? Because I
In what way?
Well, how do you know when you finish?
I think because the editor and I did eight edits, and I'd done 14. And I think when we did the 8th edit, which was probably beginning of March this year, I just said, I'm not doing it again. Could we have some wine? She said, absolutely. And our husband obviously came along with champagne and everything. I just can't do it again. I mean, yes, there are still probably the odd spelling, error, I've seen a repetition of best in one sentence, and then the next sentence there's another best, and you think, oh well.
If you're going to repeat a word, that's a good one.
It's positive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you get to the point that that's as good as my energy can give it, and then you actually want to go on to something else, because all these other ideas are coming from something else.
Could you use AI to sort of do the editing bit? Have you considered that?
You can do that. You put it through AI, and it'll pick up spelling, but a lot of it doesn't pick up the cadence and things like that. So you can do that, but that takes out the really basics. But say the verb construction has no idea about that and those sorts of things. But also, editing isn't just grammar and it's ideas. How well have you actually, Anne, my editor, will say that, well, you can say that better. She's brutally honest with me, which is great. So it's that sort of things, really. Or you've repeated that idea, or have you actually picked up that idea 20 pages later or 50 pages later? I don't think you've picked that up clearly enough for the reader. So, yes, it can do spelling, punctuation, but then punctuation is not right.
Claire, thank you very much for a wonderful book and two wonderful books, and this evening, and the wine and the food. I think everybody's got a really good idea now of what you're up to.
What you're about to read.
What you're about to read, yes.
Worth buying.
So,
Well done.
thank you very much.